Grand final win made us all believe. The world took note with Brisbane's fall. The Robins superb, now we won it all. Red Army, let's hear you sing with all your might. For your world champions in the red and white. We are okay, and we are the champions of the world.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Robin Pod Weekly, which is powered by Budget Tyres Autocentre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of the world champions, the famous Hull Kingston Rovers. Joining me on this week's Robin Pod to look back at the disappointing defeats of Warrington and look ahead to Toulouse on Saturday evening is Graham Turner. Welcome back to the Robin Pod.
Thanks, Jono. Glad to be here as always.
Lots and lots to get through, let alone the fact that as we record this, news has broke about Tevita Pangai Jr., Mikey Lewis. The squad's been announced for Toulouse. Of course, we've got the games to look back and look forward to. Steve Till also joins us for Robins Revisited. And of course, we answer your questions during question time. Right, Graham, where to start? There's been obviously a disappointing defeat to Wire and fallout from that game as well. Let's start with the breaking news, which is Tevita Pangai Jr. and Mikey Lewis suspended following the game against Warrington. Mikey Lewis, of course, received the sin binning on the pitch, which is then being reviewed by the match review panel. He's subsequently got a 2-game suspension. Rather bizarrely and oddly, I don't think I've seen it before where one player has copped, 3 charges in one game, which have then resulted in a 4-game suspension for Tevita Pangai Jr. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, first of all, disappointing that those have come about because of actions within the game from Tuesday. I think Pangai, the 3 charges are all for the same thing, and reading the match review notes, it's all for latest contact on the passer, which a choice you make as a player. So disappointed with that. Don't think he's covered himself in any glory whatsoever, with now cumulative 10 matches worth of bans from 4 or 5 matches played. So that's some going to rack that up. Lewis disappointed in the fact that as a kicker, he knows that as soon as you raise your feet, you run the risk of getting pinged for what he's got pinged for. And he's put himself in that position he didn't need to. So again, it's an active choice I think he's made to do that, regardless of how it may look or people may judge it. I think it's a dangerous act. As soon as you raise your foot like that, you think about the way that's treating football. And I know we're not talking about football here and now today, but the damage that can cause to a player as their foot comes through on yours. If he hadn't jumped and he'd have gone through the same motion with trying to block with his arms and his body, no problem at all with that. As soon as you take your foot off the floor and the opposition makes contact with it, you've left the referee, I think, no choice to make other than to do the sin bin, and then you've given the match review panel a decision to make as well, which they've obviously done and decided that two matches is the result of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come into bat for Mikey Lewis because, do you know what? Of course, now he's the subject of, yet more online abuse, mostly from supporters of opposition sides. And, let's be honest, some Rover supporters as well. I just think his reaction told me a lot. And I do think it was a genuine attempt to block the kick. That said, like you said, it is a risk. And there was no need for him to come in like that. But I do genuinely think he wasn't going in there with malice or to hurt a player, or he was genuinely going to stop that kick. But Willie Peters talked in the pre-game press conference about how this 4-game break's done him good. It's allowed him to pause. It's allowed him to look at himself, his contribution, what he's done this season. And it felt like when you saw Lewis's reaction, that's what he was almost going, Jesus, not again. Yeah. But he's got to be accountable for his own actions at the same time.
100%. And I'm not suggesting here that he's gone out with a deliberate action to injure a player. Absolutely not. But as soon as you leave the ground, regardless of whether it was intentional or not, you're giving people the opportunity to make that decision if you make contact with the player. And he could have stayed on the ground and just done exactly the same, but not jumped at it. I'm not saying that jump was a deliberate one to get Erwin injured. Absolutely not. But there's consequences and actions and consequences to consider. So that you put yourself in a risky position there. There's contact obviously being made, albeit it might be accidental, not intended, whatever you want to call it. But a decision has to be made in terms of it's injured the player, he's gone down, and then it's brought the match review panel into play as well. So yeah, it's disappointing, and I agree. I think the reaction, we all saw it with hands on head, and the shock of it that he was going to get the bin for it was probably more of a recognition of what had been said previously about how he took the time to reflect and to learn during that 4-week period, let himself down, let his teammates down, let the club down, let the fans down with his actions previously, and it was a different Mikey we were going to see now. And I think we got a glimpse of that when he popped up for that try in the first half. That's what we wanted to see, and then lo and behold, that action of jumping into the way of the kicker's leg has forced that decision to be made, and again ultimately put him on the sidelines for another couple of weeks, which interestingly doesn't kick in until the Wigan game as game 1. But looking at the squad team sheet, he's not in the squad for Saturday, which again could be more of a internal discipline type. You've got to be accountable for your actions on this one, because in theory he could have played on Saturday.
Yeah, and do you know what? And that's a frustration, isn't it? Because actually I thought Mikey Lewis was going all right against Wyatt. I thought it was wasn't spectacular, but he was making some really good contributions. Yeah. He always looked a threat with his running game. He seems to be linking up really well with Jez Litton. Yeah. And then to lose him through something like that is the biggest frustration for me. And it'd have been a bit weird, wouldn't it, if, say, for example, if he did come in and play against Toulouse, he has an absolutely brilliant game, and then he's suspended, and it'd probably even make it more frustrating that we're going to then miss him going into that Wigan game, which probably ain't as big as what it would have been if we'd have beat Wire. It'd have been an absolutely huge game, but unfortunately the players came up short, and I don't know where Mikey goes after this in a way, because I saw George Williams say after the game I thought it was a bit of a dodgy question where he was asked about what would he say to Michael Lewis, and I thought, hang on, he's a winning captain here. He don't need to be facing that question. Yeah. But he said about putting an arm around him. Obviously, he's been in the England camp. These were two. This could potentially have been the halfback pairing in the World Cup. I think Lewis, unfortunately, this season's probably played his way out of Brian McDermott's thinking. Because he's just not delivered on the big stage.
Yeah, you look at the performances and you look at the things that go with it across the full season, and I think this is his 4th yellow card of the season. Again, thinking about the reasons why he's been yellow carded. Well, trip in the first round against York. There was another trip, I can't remember which game it was, but I think there was a second trip somewhere else. And there was the incident against Warrington 4 weeks ago. And then this one, and you look at, could those have been avoided through a different decision being made? And I think at least 3 out of the 4, probably all 4, the answer is yes, he could have done something differently there and avoided that. And it's cost him 6 games in bans, 40 minutes off the field. That's from a halfback. That's not from someone who's involved in the middle. In the really rough stuff. This is from a key halfback, a key player for the team. And I don't think he's covered himself in any glory whatsoever when it comes to potential for England selection at the end of the season.
No, and of course we're going to miss out on him again for 2 more games. So, like I said, there's no doubt probably. There's no doubt in effect, in terms of him, you'd expect it's a punishment, really. I'm guessing Woody Peters is hanging him out to dry a little bit to say, look, you can't keep playing for us and making these costly mistakes. Because at that point of the game, we was in the game to a certain point, So, look, there's no doubt.
Sorry, John, just to interrupt as well, just thinking as well, in-game, he also kicked out on the full, which resulted in them scoring a try on the back of it. There was a kick for touch the other week that didn't make touch and the opposition scored on the back. So again, things aren't going well on the pitch, as well as they could be on the pitch for him as well. And there's liabilities there in terms of we're conceding points on the back of some of those errors, and they're proving costly in all departments. And because it is Mikey and the profile he brings to himself and what he's achieved so far in his career with us, the spotlight's on him. So everything is magnified 10 times just because it's him. So every good thing is done, but likewise on the flip side, everything that it goes wrong, it's just another excuse for people to bash him as well. So he's got to be able to detract himself away from that and just focus on the game itself and everything that's within the game, and forget all the distractions and the noise around it.
Yeah, I mean, Willie Peters, he said, in the build up to the game, he's 25 years old now. He's a senior player. He's not learning he's still learning the game, but he's actually, a senior figure within that side.
Yeah. And he was talking in the pre-match presser this week of wanting to introduce him into that senior leadership group within the club.
Yeah. Interesting one with Mikey. I mean, don't get me wrong, and quite rightly, he gets the plaudits when he does well.
Absolutely.
Look at the try he scored against Warrington. Great anticipation, great connection with Jez Litton.
Yeah.
And, don't forget, what he did in the grand final last season. But for every 3 steps forward, there seems to be 1 or 2 back. And just when you think he's going to reach a real consistent level of performance, or he's going to bring something really magic, at the moment it seems to be going the other way.
And like many, I'm sure like most fans, once he'd served his 4-match ban, fans were getting really excited about hearing the noises coming out that he was ready to go. It was a different Mikey. He was going to, and then we're thinking now about the end of season push and moving into the playoffs. Great, we've got Mikey back. He's going to be firing for us, and all of a sudden, again, it goes back to that couple of steps backwards that we're taking now that he's going to have 3 matches on the sideline.
Yeah. And, we'll talk about the Toulouse game later on, but it looks like Ryan Hampshire will then once again step back into his boots. And one play, though, Graham, Tevita Pangai Jr., a signing that really, really hasn't worked out for the Robins. He's played 5 games. He's been suspended for 10. Absolutely ridiculous in such a short time frame. And the fact that he's been charged 3 times for late contact on a passer in 1 game is, for me, absolutely outrageous. And his mission is a simple one for me. Be that impact player who runs the ball hard, crashes into the tackle and keep doing that. Whereas at the moment, and what we've seen previously, he wants to make his mark on the game by doing things that are part of the game. He wants to, hit the players late. You see him on the floor with the opposition. You're seeing all the unnecessary stuff. And do you know what? It's come home to roost, hasn't it? He's one of, if only one of the signings Willie Peters made where it's gone wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we've talked on this podcast before, John, about how astute Peters and the board and the club have been in terms of the signings, and how the vast majority have worked well for us. This is one that falls into the absolute opposite end of the spectrum here. And I think, like many, I was one that said, look, let's give him a chance, see what he can do. When he first turned up, he was out of shape. That was clear to see. stupid in terms of the actions that he took to get his six match ban in the first place against Leeds. Again, hearing all the noises about how he'd knuckled down, how he'd trimmed off, got himself fit, and again was looking forward to him putting in the sort of performance and seeing a different sort of attitude in his performance that said, yeah, he's somebody who we should consider beyond 2026. But having seen the comeback on Tuesday evening as it was, I would be more than happy if we didn't see him in a Rovers shirt again, given his...
Well, I don't think we will, because one of them suspensions is is a playoff game. Who knows? Yeah. I expect Rovers to be in the playoffs, but I can't see him being, unless there's a catastrophic injury crisis where our backs are, I can't see him lining up.
He hasn't done enough for me to earn the right to wear that shirt. The vast majority of his actions have been average in terms of impact in the game. He's had a few sparks of moments, don't get me wrong, but I was expecting a lot more. And what I have seen the impact has made has been all from a negative perspective. I don't think he's earned the right to wear the shirt from a fan's perspective and earned our trust and our respect as a player for Hull KR. I'm sure his teammates have got something to say about that internally as well, and that'll be no doubt kept as an internal matter. But you can't imagine teammates are very happy with that. You can't imagine Peters, who's put his faith in him, offered him an opportunity to sort of resurrect a career that was just drifting along, didn't go anywhere particularly well at Catalans last year, drifted out of rugby league into a bit of rugby union. What was it, 7th tier or something like that?
Which is probably quite telling now, isn't it? When in hindsight.
Yeah, but again, we've trusted Willie Peters in the market before, and he knows the player. He worked with him in Australia as well previously, so they've got that connection, that relationship. So I can imagine Willie Peters can't be very happy in the trust and the faith that he showed in him to bring him over, give him that opportunity again, for it to be sort of almost rammed back down his throat the way it has been with 10 matches worth of suspensions in, 5 games, I think you said.
Yeah.
That's not the way to repay, in my opinion. That's not the way to repay somebody who's shown that faith in you. And if he is angling for another contract somewhere else, again, I can't see many people wanting to jump at that chance, given what they've seen this last couple of months that he's been with us.
Yeah, and it was his try, and Dean Hadley's late on that putter, made the game look a bit more competitive in terms of the scoreline. In reality, despite the Robins leading 14-10 at half-time, it was a game where just the unforced errors, just, some of the sloppy defence meant that you always felt that they just had that bit more zip, that bit more energy, bit more control. Yeah. If you look at George Williams, England captain, he put in a performance that was worthy of him being captain, and that's why it was a shame that they didn't really go toe to toe with Mikey Lewis, and George Williams showed everything that he could want with about desire. He scored a fantastic try, but it was another try straight through the heart of the Robins, and it's becoming all too easy to score against us when we prided ourselves on that defence, that ability to, even in the tight games, to shut out the opposition.
Yeah.
Now, when teams go through us, they don't just get one, they get two, they get three, and that's why we're seeing some of these big scorelines. 34 points to Warrington at home. Yeah. It's not acceptable, is it?
No, and I think the bit for me in the first half, if you take the blocks of the game as two halves, the first half I thought we defended pretty well to resist a lot of pressure that Warrington threw at us, and to go in 14-10 at half-time up. I was surprised that we'd gone in the lead, but that for me just showed that resilience that we've demonstrated before, and we've seen it in patches this season, but it was where we saw it a lot last year. So I was quite encouraged at half-time to think, okay, we've weathered a storm there, we've gone behind, we've not panicked, and we've worked our way back into the game, and we've gone in ahead. And I thought that was going to be a platform for us to kick on for the second half and show a bit more of that resilience and show that desire and the will to win the game. But within, 3 or 4 minutes, there was Sipley, I think it was, had gone straight down the middle again, ripped somebody's inside shoulder off, again, which doesn't usually happen. Morgan give a daft penalty away for obstruction. Again, a choice that is made to give them another 2 points. Lewis kicked out on the full. They scored on the back of that. So there's 14 points there. That's before you get to Williams's try, where again he's gone through the middle. So practically 20 points in that second half. I won't say we've gifted them, but we've made it very easy for them to get 20 points out of us. And that's not the way we've prided ourselves, as you suggested, certainly last season. And for the most part, we've sort of shown that up over the last few weeks, and not been as easy to beat. But to concede 20 points like that, mainly of our own doing, by not being tight enough in defence, by making some poor decisions defensively, giving penalties away, by missing touch or kicking out on the full, those are conscious decisions that we can make differently or do differently. Therefore, we don't end up conceding those 20 points. It might be a different outcome. I don't know. But look, not taking anything away from Warrington's performance, because they deserve the win. And I thought the scoreline flattered us in the end. And we cannot hide behind the fact of, we played on Thursday night, because Warrington played on Thursday night and they rocked up on Tuesday, like you said, full of energy, full of enthusiasm, full of effort, and looked like they were focused on being a playoff team and having a good crack at those playoffs.
Yeah, and if you look at the Warrington tries in the main, how many of them were one-on-one tackles that were missed, players rushing out the line to try and make a tackle, players not working as that unit, and players trying to make things happen when actually there should be trusting the collective effort. And I think that's what's gone amiss so many times this season, where collectively they're not at it. They're not working as that unit, which makes it so easy for the opposition to just carve down the middle. And you saw it with Williams.
Sorry, Matt, I was just going to say, is that then a focus and concentration thing? Because we're talking, it was a few minutes only after coming out of the half-time break. And again, I think we've done this quite often, come out sloppily starting second halves after, we've conceded a few points straight after half-time. Is it a focus and concentration thing? Are we trying to is one man trying to fix somebody else's problem and not, jumping out of the system? All questions that you and I aren't qualified enough to answer here, but I'm sure Peters and the coaching staff will be looking at that. And I wondered if it was telling that, whether it was because Luckley played big minutes on Thursday night previously, that he only got one stint of about 10 minutes, got his inside shoulder ripped off, and then was hooked pretty much after that, and never saw him again in the game. So,
what's going on with Sosu? Third game in a row now where he's done a 20 odd minute stint, and we've never seen him again. So you factor in that with Luckley, you're playing with basically two interchanges, and that's why Whitbread looked like he was being flogged out there. 40 plus tackles he had to make.
Pangai played all second half.
Yeah, so these are some of the. If Sue's not fit and he's only good for 20 minutes, for me, he shouldn't be anywhere near the side then. Or it can't be tactics where you go, hang on, we've got a fully fit Sue, but he's only going to play 20 minutes. I just can't get my head around that one. And is he too loyal to certain players? Because there seems to be some players who, no matter what they do, will be in that side no matter what. And if, for example, Sue's not 100%, like I said, he shouldn't be in that side. We can't afford to. If you look at the fatigue and you look at the efforts, some of the players, I think fatigue comes into it. So you need a strong four on the bench, don't you, to make sure you can make them rotations. Hadley again. Big minutes, putting a massive effort in. We just seem to be so reliant on a few players, and I think it's hurting us.
Well, you look at the squad rotations from last year, John, and we probably could say the same thing about last year, but it worked for us last year. We didn't have as many injuries last year, I don't think. Sue's been carrying a foot injury for the last month or so. It seems can play but comes off struggling afterward, and you could argue that's not the best thing for the week after or the week after that, especially if we're going into playoffs and needing fit bodies. You'd want to get that right, and like you say, we've got other people in the squad who can can come in. I think Desiree is out of action now for a little while because he's having a minor op, I believe, as well. So that's a body down. Pangai is going to be down, man down. Sue might be out of action if his foot injury prevents him from playing more than, like you say, 20 minutes or something. It's going to mean other people are going to have to do other big minutes in potentially unfamiliar positions as well.
Yeah, and there ain't so much flexibility there either, is there? In the back row. I mean, Reece Martin, he's sort of, he can be brilliant, but he can be very average as well. In
form's dipped. Yeah, form's risen and dipped quite frequently with Reece, and he's not been consistent at all. And obviously, Batch comes in on Saturday as well, so that you'd like to think you'd get a nice steady performance out of Batch as always. Whitbread did look very tired, but like you said, because he's probably having to do huge minutes that he hasn't been doing before against a team that are energetic, that are running at you, he had to do a lot of work, did Whitbread, and I felt sorry for the graft he had to do without having a breather on Tuesday.
Tyrone May, another player who looked a little bit jaded. Of course, he, Peter said that I think it was his knee, wasn't it? He was struggling with a little bit. I think we saw him limping again as well on Tuesday night. Which
he's not in the squad, is he, for Saturday?
No, so hey, that's going to be interesting to see what happens there, isn't it? So, whether it's rotation, I don't think it necessarily is rotation. I think some of these players are now just reached the point where they can't keep playing. So whether we're going to see an energetic, a reinvigorated side through changes on Saturday is yet to be seen. But across the park, they just, we couldn't match Warrington's energy and want to win. No, I don't want to say I want to win because, of course, the players wanted to win. But
I agree.
I think fatigue stopped them being able to make them extra efforts.
We had to spend a lot of energy in defence, took it out the tank, and obviously with the shorter turnaround, the more time you spend in defence, it's easier to play when you've got ball in hand and it's going well. When you're on the back foot and defending a lot, your tanks drain a lot quicker. And with that 4-day turnaround, you haven't had the chance to do the full recovery and the usual week that you get. So it's much easier to play with the ball on the front foot than it is to be backtracking and defending all the time. And like I say, that second half performance, whether it was a lot of things compounding together to go against us, but we didn't look like, or we haven't looked like for weeks, again, in my opinion, we haven't looked like a team that's on the up, pushing towards the playoffs for a peak in the playoffs. There's other teams much better equipped at that, looking like that at the minute. 3 or 4 weeks out from playoffs. I think we're way off that at the minute.
Well, we've only beat one of the current top 5, and that was, of course, Wigan pre-Challenge Cup final, and that was a much changed side for Wigan. Anytime we've really had to come to the fore in terms of the league, we've struggled. Any game where it's allowed us to get up the playoffs into a commanding position into we've come up short, and that's why I expect many Rovers fans won't have that much confidence that if we do, which we should, get into the playoffs, that in a knockout game we're going to be able to sufficiently raise the game to overcome the challenge.
Yeah, I think we've got, if you look at the top 5, top 6 now, we've beat Leeds beat Lee home and away, beg your pardon, which I thought was 2 fantastic results in the scheme of the season. However, that top 4, we've got beaten by Leeds twice, beaten by Wakefield twice, beaten by Warrington twice. We beat a much changed Wigan side, but I can't imagine we're going to Wigan, a week on Saturday, expecting to win that one. So you could argue then that there's an opportunity there that we'd get beat by Wigan twice. So again, all these are the playoff contenders, the serious teams in the competition this year, and we haven't come up with a positive result against one of the top four at the minute, apart from that one against the Wigan reserve team, if you like. So yeah, I think that's telling when you look at that season on season. There's we did the doubles over Warrington last season. We lost against Wakey, but we beat Wakey, we beat Leeds. So there's differences in that, and I think if we had to put our necks on the line now, I don't think we'd be confident going into the playoffs in the form we're in, playing against any one of those 4 or 5 teams. And I put Lee into that bracket as well, because I think they're a team that's on the up and playing really well at the minute.
Yeah, and hey, look, they've still got an opportunity. They keep getting.
Yeah, and that's it. They're still in the mix. I've said all that negative stuff there, but we're still in the mix. And can we turn it? Can we turn things around? Can we turn attitude around? Can we cut out silly defensive? Straightforward, I'm sure, to fix, but can we cut those out? Can we cut those errors out that we've been making? Can we stop giving away silly penalties like the obstruction from Morg, for example? Can we make those decisions where the ball does go into touch or does stay in the field of play? Those are a lot of the things are controllable and fixable. Have we got the ability to do that? Because I don't doubt that the players want to do it. Us as fans want to see it happen, and I don't doubt the players can do it because we've seen it done before. And that's part of the frustration I guess is we've seen it, experienced it with them, and we know they can do it. And it's a different thing this season that we're experiencing, and we're not quite used to it, and possibly wondering why and looking for some answers that we might never get or never understand. But there's always that chance once you're in the mix, you've got the opportunity. Can you focus all your time and effort and attention in getting a good shot at the playoffs?
Yeah, and another game where the Robins have missed 40 plus tackles, which And
it's not normal, is it? It's not us.
It's consistent. It is consistent. Missing at least 40 tackles in a game now for Rovers is pretty much coming the norm. Don't get me wrong, as Bazza Kingston says, there's lots of ways of viewing missed tackles, but all I'll say is we are consistently missing more tackles than the opposition. So it's not all about our stats are recorded. It's quite clear to see that the Robins are falling off way too many times in challenges. And, going back to the point I was making, if you've got one person trying to tackle someone who's running at pace, it is very, very difficult. So, there's work to be done on the training ground, but there's not that much time to do that between now and Saturday's days, when you factor in recovery time as well and giving the players opportunity to rest.
No.
So, and this Toulouse side we're facing, look, they've come up with some big results this season.
No mugs. Yeah, no mugs. And I think it's a dangerous game on Saturday for us. I think it's dangerous if we don't start well, if we don't demonstrate that we're back on it, that we've got energy, that we've got enthusiasm, that we've got quality with ball in hand. I think we could be in for a tough ask, because they'll ask us a lot of questions. I've watched them a few times this season, and even Ashelbot has been one of their standouts. He's injured at the minute, but even without him, they've been playing some good, attractive stuff. And I think if we get on the wrong end of that on Saturday, they'll smell it as an opportunity, I believe. And if we're not on it, we could get, we could be in for a tough afternoon.
Yeah, which normally you wouldn't have been saying, would you? You'd expect Rovers. No. And hey, look, come on, they did, the 4 games prior, while Mikey Lewis was suspended, they did win at ease, really, during them 4 games. So they've certainly got it in them. There's no doubt whatsoever as well.
Yeah, albeit look at those opposition, and as soon as we come up against a Warrington who are in playoff form and playoff position, we're talking about the bottom 4 or 5 of the table there in that block of games. So I don't doubt from a point scoring perspective and results perspective, but quality wise, we came up against a quality opposition on Tuesday night, and I was excited to watch the game, obviously, but excited to see and intrigued to see how we'd perform against another playoff contender. And I think we came well short.
Yeah, and to be fair, not the first time this season, and like we said, it's okay beating the Castlefords, the Bradfords, Catalans. Yeah. It's okay beating them, but it's these games which are the big ones. Right, okay, before we talk a little bit more about Toulouse on Saturday and answer all your questions during question time, Steve Till joins us once again for Robins Revisited.
Hi, Chris. And this week, I'm going to go back 45 years to season 1980 and 81. Rovers had just won the cup, beating that lot at Wembley in the May, and the new season started with 2 Yorkshire Cup ties in the same week, and that's this week 45 years ago. The first match was against Wakefield Trinity, and we beat them 21-17 at Craven Park in front of 7,628. It was a remarkable game. Wakefield had a strong pack, but not only that, they had a guy called Michael Omkowski, who they'd signed from England Rugby Union. They'd signed him from Wakefield Rugby Union, who had a strong team in those days, and lamb chops, as people used to call him. He actually played in these 5 nations, as it was then, for England at scrum half. I think Wakefield utilised him more of a loose forward. But and most of the Rovers Wembley team played with Wally Youngman replacing Clive Sullivan, and Ray Price was the hooker for Rovers instead of Watke. But Rovers scorers were David Hall, who got 2 tries, Steve Hartley, Mike Smith, Wally Youngman, with 3 goals from Phil Hogan. Wakefield, as I say, included a try from Michael Omkowski, and it was a strong Wakefield pack that day, led by Bill Ashurst, with the Rain twins backing him up in the back 3. Ashurst was a no-nonsense second row forward who'd been playing for Penrith in Australia before coming to Wakefield, and he took no prisoners when he tackled you. And his second row partner was Keith Rain, and the other Rain brother, he was loose forward. It was an excellent performance by Rovers, to be honest, to have beaten Wakefield 21-17. And then later in the week, we were drawn against Featherstone, and again it was at Craven Park, where we played in front of 9,000, and there was a 6-try performance from Rovers. So there was 2 tries from Mike Smith, and Nick Crane had replaced Phil Lowe in the team, with Len Casey going into the second row, Crane playing at loose forward, and he managed a try, as did David Hall, Steve Hartley, and none other than prop forward John Millington. Phil Hogan landed 7 goals, with Paul Harkin, the scrum half, contributing a drop goal. What was remarkable, though, was that Rovers had kept Featherstone out throughout the game. They didn't concede a try, and Featherstone's 12 points came from 5 penalties awarded to Featherstone within kicking range by referee Ronnie Campbell, who wasn't Rovers' favourite referee, by the way, at that time. But as I say, Steve Quinn kicked 5 penalties, and there were drop goals from Stephen Barker and Great Britain international second row forward David Hobbs. So we'd won our first 2 games, both Yorkshire Cup ties. We went on to play Castleford in the semi-final. We beat Castleford at Weldon Road, and that was in the September, and then the final wasn't until November, where we travelled to Fartown in Huddersfield to play Leeds, who sadly beat us 8-7. But as I say, the season in those days opened with Yorkshire Cup ties.
A huge thanks to Steve Till for joining us once again for Robins Revisited. Graham, we know there's no Tyrone May. We know there's no Tevita Pangai Jr. We know there's no Mikey Lewis. Looking at the squad that's been announced, we've seen Louis Gorman included. We've seen
Jack Charles is in there, isn't he?
Jack Charles is in there. Bill Leyland's in there. Noah Booth's in there. Ryan Hampshire, of course. You expecting to see any other changes that are maybe not enforced and maybe an opportunity, or do you think, look, Peters doesn't really go off script, does he? It almost feels like there's probably more chance of seeing Jez Litton in the halves than there is Jack Charles right now.
Yeah, I think the back five is 1 to 5, so I think that takes care of itself. Albeit I'm not sure on Gildart's fitness. I'm sure he would come straight back in if he was fit and available for it. So then you would sort of question Booth's introduction into the sort of match day 17. I'd like to see Leyland get a good run. I think Jez has done lots of minutes recently. Could he play in the halves? Should he play in the halves? Again, question mark. Hampshire and Charles, is that an option? Again, there's permutations all across the park there. I guess the other bit that we don't know, John, is what the physios are saying and what the players are saying about their fitness and availability, and does it need to freshen up in there? It's definitely going to be a new half-back pairing, whatever it is. Is it the time to bring Jack Charles in this game? Give him a bit of exposure at this level.
The only thing you'd say on that point is that, well, it's the same for, to be fair, Bill Leyland. Like, Jack Charles would be coming into that pretty cold in terms of, he hadn't had. So what I mean is he won't have had a full week of training with the captain's run at the end of it and then going into the game, because they'll have been training with Main Lewis for the Wire game.
But somebody's going to have to do that for the next 3 weeks. Who's going to do it for 3 weeks? So
that's where I go. Well, is he going to go Leyland, Lawton at hooker, slot Litton into the halves, go with Hampshire, and then potentially on the bench you could then see, you could even see Frankie Dealove coming in potentially onto the bench. Don't forget as well, James Batchelor's coming back, so that frees up a space there. It's we don't know how much of a kick up the backside Willie Peters is going to give the side in terms of making rotations, or does he stick with, which he's pretty much done consistently, he's tried and tested his trusted players, and or is this the time where we see it sort of get ripped up a little bit and we try and he maybe tries and forces a reaction, he tries to spark something a bit different. But how we see the game is often very different to how the head coaches see the game, isn't it?
It is, because we're not obviously privy to the day-to-day interactions and the recovery and the work that they're doing behind the scenes. All we see is the warm-up and the match itself. So we're just speculating here. And I think with the opportunity to bring people in, to give them minutes, we've got 3-4 more games to go, plus, fingers crossed, playoff activity as well. It's as good a time as any to bring people in, get them experience if they are going to be part of those plans. Form, suspensions, injuries can all kick in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So players might be asked to step up, and if they've got, like you say, coming in cold and no experience under the belt at all, it's a tough ask. So having the opportunity to bring a Dealove in off the bench or give Charles minutes on there, and it seems like a sensible option. However, like you're suggesting, that's not been Peters and the coaching staff's normal mode of operation. It's been we've got our strongest team, that's what we're going to put out, and it's bitten us on the bum a few times recently, and we can't afford to have that going into the end of season and into playoffs. We need to be flipping it over into a much more dynamic situation for us, where we're on the front foot rather than being on the back foot, looking fatigued and not competing in on the scoreboard to be the 2 points or to progress through the playoffs. So tricky one. I think there will be some changes. Obviously, there's going to be changes because of the enforcements, but I think there will be changes. I think there's opportunity here, and I'd just welcome your thoughts here, John. I think over the last few weeks, I've seen a different string to Jez Litton's bow that's been played here, in terms of more of him running with ball in hand and being a kicking threat, and not, that might have been because of Mikey's unavailability over the last 4 weeks. But even on Tuesday night, there was a kick threat from Lytton. So that running, passing, kicking threat could work well in the house for him with Hampshire, and then free up Lawton Leyland to do the minutes at hooker.
Well, the other scenario, Graham, is obviously Artemore goes back into the halves like he was supposed to.
Yeah.
You then bring in
early on.
You bring in Broadbent back at fullback, and then potentially you either put Martin or Louis Gorman into the centres. So there's probably two ways.
Gildart and Hickey, they're both in. So
so look, there's
options that permutations. Yeah, it's whether it sticks, like you say, with those, shall we call them senior players, your Morg in the halves with Hampshire, for example, and put Broadbent back in, and then you two outside backs on each side of the regulars. That might be the way to go. You could argue Jez could slot in there, but then where do you put Broadbent? Question mark. Is that cover for Gildart just in case Gildart's not right? Booth could do a wing or a centre combination. So again, there's ifs, buts, and maybes all over the place. There, again, like always, we've got to trust in Willie and the coaching staff to put the right squad out there on Saturday with the right attitude and enthusiasm and desire to go and put in a performance that tells us, we're back on it. We've dusted ourselves off. We've took that one on the chin, but we're now back on it, and we'll get back to what we do and do well.
Yeah, and Willie Peters talks about before the Warrington game about how there's no disconnects with the group. The players are as tight as they've ever been, and I don't know if it's just me picking up, but it does feel like after tries scored and that tightness doesn't seem to be there. There seems to be play not looking around aimlessly, but there doesn't seem to be that collective, huddled together. Right, we're going to go out there and right these wrongs. They seem to stand as individuals, and there's not much talk. And it don't feel like it did last season, where even when we did concede tries in big games, there was almost that sort of, you got an instant response. We don't seem to be getting that from the bottom. And it's only my opinion and what it looks like. I was sat in the South Stand on Tuesday, so unfortunately I got a first-hand view of it. But I have noticed, not just at the game on Tuesday, a few games where, for whatever reason, and I might just be reading too much into nothing, that they don't seem, it don't feel like they're as connected as what Willie Peters may have said that they are.
Yeah, maybe, and whether you're putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 4 or 5 is, we'll probably never know that. We'd take Willie Peters' words. He's always seemed to be an honest guy in interviews previously. So if he says they're a connected group, then I believe that's the case. But like you say, it does beg the question when you're conceding 2 or 3 tries straight down the middle of you, and you've got that opportunity to have a chat with each other behind the sticks while the conversion's going over and saying, right, okay, where did that one come from? How did we let that one in? What needs fixing up? And making sure that doesn't happen again. And then lo and behold, it does. It doesn't, it doesn't smell of a connected group that are solving problems on the fly. They're almost, like you say, operating as individuals and jumping out the line and not being a connected unit. So, maybe there isn't something in that. I'm not quite sure on that one.
Yeah, okay, right. Let's go to question time. Okay, a huge thank you to everyone who's put in their questions once again. Where should we start? Matt Baxter on Facebook, he says, has discipline cost us in games this season from winning trophies? I don't know. Ultimately, the more times you got 13 players on the pitch, the more opportunity you've got to win a game. Yeah,
and the less penalties you give away, yardage penalties, you're giving away 3 meters down the pitch. You're inviting people onto your defensive structures, and if they're not quite right, you're conceding points. Therefore, you're putting yourself out of games rather than keeping yourself in games. So I do think discipline has been an issue for us this year. Not just the formal yellows and red cards, but in game giving silly penalties away. and making some of those active choices to that end up resulting in definitive yardage penalties that, like I say, have cost us.
Yeah. Adam Wadforth, he says the atmosphere was much better on Tuesday, but a lot of fans leaving with 10 to 15 minutes remaining wasn't a good look. Firstly, the better side won. And also, it's still only our second home defeat this season, and it's not like we have lost many during the Willie Peters era. We need to stick with this side, win the home games, and we'll end up in the playoffs. The atmosphere was better, particularly at the start of the game. But obviously, as Warrington got on top, you could feel, and you could certainly hear the Warrington fans. They were having a great time, weren't they? And they made themselves really...
Yeah, quite right. Yeah, they'd earned the right to be noisy and enjoy that victory as well. So I think, we got to remember as fans, it's not our duty to make an atmosphere, because it's part of the experience. You go for the game. I love the atmosphere when it's buzzing and it's crackling and it's noisy and loud under the lights and all that. When it's quiet and we're just expecting, it's almost as if you start watching a play and you're just saying, "Go on, then entertain me." No, we need to flip it up. You could see and hear it at times when we, as a crowd, recognised that the team needed that extra bit, whether it's in defence or we got right behind them. And it seemed to sort of galvanise them a bit, but it ultimately wasn't that case in the second half. But we've got a part to play, absolutely, as fans. And I understand why people do leave early. It's not something I choose to do, regardless of the result. But it's not a great look when we're the ones who'll give it out when other fans leave early. We've got to be able to accept that and take it back when our fans are streaming out with 5 or 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, and it has become a feature whether we're winning or losing. There just seems to be a bit of a mass exodus once the game's confirmed either way. So, and it's never sort of been the Rovers, has it? Where a lot of people, even through thick and thin, people have always stuck around to thank the players for their efforts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But win the home games, win the playoffs. I suppose, the biggest shot in the arm will be to beat Toulouse and go beat Wigan, won't it? That even so, even then, that gives you actually, if you can go away to Wigan, there's still a performance in these boys. There's still an opportunity there. Suppose a laboured victory over Toulouse and then a disappointing defeat to Wigan ain't really the form you want to be taking into a playoff campaign. No,
but I think even look, let's assume a couple of things here. Let's assume there's a win on Saturday, however it comes about. I'd be more interested in the performance against Wigan, not so much the result. The result will take care of itself, but it's the performance. Are we putting in a Hull KR 80-minute performance and we win, or are we putting a Hull KR performance and we lose? That's, like I say, that result will take care of itself. It's the how we react to situations in game. If we go behind earlier on, do we capitulate? Do we show that resolve and resilience? If we're still in the game or leading the game, how do we close the game out? All those things, because I don't think we've had that 80-minute performance against a good team that's a playoff contending team. I don't think we've seen a complete performance yet. And that's, again, another indicator of mindset, attitude, etc., going into those playoff games a couple of weeks after that.
Yeah, James Scrutiny said the Toulouse game will, for me, answer a lot of questions as to why we haven't squad rotated more. We should have a few brought in for the game in Charles, Booth, Leyland, another young one in 17, D-Love, I'm guessing. If they aren't, then we'll know it is down to a cap issue, because obviously that's what's been rumoured, isn't it? That certain players are not playing because of the impact it'd have on the salary cap. I don't necessarily think some players being omitted will actually answer that question, because, like we've talked about Willie Peters' squad selections and team selections, which explains maybe why we have flogged players all season. Sume, Hadley, Minchella should definitely be rested as a start.
Yeah.
We'll see what we'll see. It's all up in the air. We'll see.
I disagree, yeah.
An hour and a half before kick-off, 4 o'clock on Saturday, we'll see the lineup, and then we'll know, won't we? Which, for me, we should probably give you the direction of travel to the end of Willie Peters' era now. That lineup against Toulouse will probably shine a light on where we're going.
Yeah, and look, I guess there's a bit of a sentimental statement coming here, John, around this is going to be the end of Peters' era in a few weeks' time with OKR. And it'd be a shame for that, what he's achieved and where we started at 4 years ago, for it to almost just fizzle out to a little bit of a whimper in in a few weeks' time, or be a bit of a disastrous end to the season. That would be, I think, a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth to what has been a fantastic so far for 3.5 years that he's been with us, and we've seen progression on and off the field with the club. We've seen, obviously silverware being delivered. We've seen it as fans, a new breed of fan and new volumes of fans coming to the club. It'd be a shame for all that to be, like I say, leave a sour taste in the mouth if we just finish with a bit of a whimper and don't go out with ourselves, fighting and swinging to keep in the playoffs.
No, hey, look, this could still be a season where the Rovers, Robins have been crowned world champion, played in the Challenge Cup final and finished in the playoffs. Yeah. Things that we wouldn't have, while back 5 years, you know. Yeah. But I think when the bar's set so high, like it was last season, that there's a I don't know, you can see why some people are a bit frustrated, because don't forget as well, it wasn't us talking about creating a dynasty. It was the club. It was Paul Lake. It was people who were saying, right, this is the start. This isn't a one-off. This is where we want to be all the time. So that's where the pressures, I suppose, on them. Paul Richardson says, along the same lines about resting players, Julie Rodman again, would you rest players? Yes and no. It's a tough one. I would like to see certain players maybe be given an opportunity. That don't mean that they're necessarily ready to be given that opportunity, which is it's a really cutthroat environment at the moment, isn't it? When we're at the back end of the season. Paula Richardson, she says, as Tevita Pangai Jr. ultimately been a disappointing signing for Rovers, given the expectation when he's arrived compared with what he's actually delivered. I don't want to go as far as to say he's one of Rovers' worst ever signings, but he's certainly up there in the Willie Mason category in terms of his impact and what he's contributed to the side. Just very, very disappointing, and not a great payback for, like you said, to Willie Peters or the club who gave him a chance when many of us wouldn't. So I think ultimately it will go down as a very, very disappointing contribution.
I think somebody's going to have to correct me on this, but so please drop a comment in. But I think Mason only played 6 games.
Yeah, but he wasn't suspended for 10, was he?
So Pangai's played 5 and suspended for 10. So I would argue it was a worse signing than Mason.
Yeah. At least, to be fair.
But I'm sure somebody will correct me on that.
He says, very interesting how the club are going to get new players in. As for me, we need some up-and-coming hungry forwards. Bit puzzled why we've offered some players new contracts. We're pretty much hamstrung our new head coach. I mean, it is an interesting point, isn't it? Because if you look at the squad we're playing with, as of now, it's the squad that we're playing with next season.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
unless there's movements out of contracts where people are moved off their contract they're on and moved on, we haven't got much room for maneuver.
Well, Sean Michael, he says, I genuinely believe there'll be some surprise movement involving contracted players, mutual consent or paid off. I hope so, because the squad desperately needs an uplift. We simply didn't strengthen enough after our success. The rotation debate has been done to death now. Time to improve the squad and move forward. I suppose it's the dilemma is, isn't it, when you taste success, is do you keep faith in the players who've delivered that success to want it again and go again because they've showed that they can achieve it? Or do you roll the dice and go, do you know what, cutthroat, these boys, they've achieved it now. They won't have the same hunger, so we need to make some big decisions. Yeah. Ultimately, Peters has gone down the route of tried and tested, trusted the players he's brought in to the point where Pet Hickle, for example, Jesse Sue, got new contracts. It does feel like, though, when I look at the squad, something's got to change, because I can't imagine Nathan Cayley's not wanting to bring in some players that he's familiar with and wants to work with. Yeah,
I agree. And there's a few sort of things going on at the same time here with that. Once you've got that success of the grand final win, etc., everybody's on a high. And I guess you want to reward that squad for doing well. So there's, the rewards for Hiku, Sue, for example. Obviously, Martin's made the decision to retire, which is fair enough. But that reward impacts on your salary cap and limits your ability to make, that squad from last year. If there's been an uplift in anything it just adds to the salary, because we haven't got rid of loads of players to create salary cap, so it just squeezes that even harder, which is why that whole discussion about Jack Charles coming in and salary cap keeps doing the rounds. What we've also got to have one eye on, I think there's an issue coming over the hill for next season at the end of 2027. And if you look at the players who are going out on end of natural contracts at 27, I think there's a few in there that we need to be mindful of. Hiku and Sue you've mentioned. I think Hadley's at the end of 27 as well, and I think there's a couple of others, key ones as well, that are around about that time. So again, there could be an important job for Kalis to do next year if he inherits the squad as it is, and we're presuming that there's no further movements at the end of this squad. I think it's transfer deadline tomorrow as well, isn't it? So
yeah.
Unless anything happens there, then that's our squad. Then he's got to have an eye on recruitment, but he's inheriting that squad, which is going to be 2 years older than the squad that won the grand final and was relatively an aging squad then.
But yeah, and look, there is some exciting prospects in the background, isn't there? Declan Murphy, Tom Whitehead, Jack Charles.
Yeah.
You go through the list.
Miller,
Look at Junior Sambu. I mean, I still blows when we signed him and then sent him out on to Oldham for a seat. So there is players in the background who, but all you'd think is their opportunities will still be very limited, whilst the existing first teamers are still there. So. Yeah, let's see what happens there. Right. Okay, Graham, a huge thank you for your contribution once again on the Robin Pod. A huge thank you to everyone who sent in their questions. Make sure you send them in after the Toulouse game, ready for next week's edition of the Robin Pod, which is, of course, powered by Budget Tyres Autocentre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of the world-famous Hull Kingston Rovers. If you're going to the game on Saturday, live, love, laugh and be happy.
This is the Robin Pod. Robin Pod. This is the Robin Pod. Whoa. Throughout the years, whatever the game, the Red Army's passion is always the same. Decades pass, now we rise anew. Rovers fans, this pod is for you. We won the cup, we ruled the league. A grand final win made us all believe. The world took note with Brisbane's fall. The Robins superb, now we won it all. Red Army, let's hear you sing with all your might. For your world champions in the red and white. We are okay, and we are the champions of the world.